Interestingly enough, at the time of this, there is a bit of a backbench rebellion. Lots of Tory MPs are now increasingly worried, as we've mentioned before in past videos on this, that they are worried that Britain cannot survive both the coronavirus recession and a no-deal Brexit. But in the meantime, you have the other part of the Conservative Party, the hard right wing, the ERG lot, who are now obsessed with Brexit at any cost, regardless, because they are obsessed with disaster capitalism. And disaster capitalism is going to become a word that us in the UK are going to be on very, very close terms with. It's going to enter our lexicon like a wrecking ball, literally. And when it's done, there's going to be nothing left to try and pick up. The American trade deal is going to guarantee that Americans can now come into the boards on British companies, and then they can, shall we say, well, literally just take jobs from the UK and bring them over to the US. And their trade secretary has been very, very clear on that. And don't think that, oh, it's all right if Donald Trump gets unelected, that's somehow going to change, because it's not. The lobbies that are behind rallying for this, they haven't changed. They will not change their tune if Biden gets in. And more importantly, these concessions for, like, say, Liz Truss has said, oh, it's okay, chlorinated chicken, there'll be for the next 10 years, there'll be higher tariffs. Again, you're still going to get chlorinated chicken. It'll just be more expensive for a time, and then it'll come shooting down in price. But that's not going to happen, because if you've paid any attention to the big US food lobby over there, they have been pretty much steadfast and said that there should be no tariffs from day one. And they will and the US is powerful enough just to put a complete block on any trade deal until we acquiesced to those demands. And that will be just the start. Because, as we've said before, the UK is not this secret trading power that Brexiteers claimed it was, and Brexit supporters were completely conned into thinking that it was. That is a Britain of a bygone era that could never, ever come back, purely because it was an empire. And as we've talked about this before, the entire plan of Empire 2.0, which is why why the British government has been so desperate to go and sign a deal with Australia and New Zealand, thinking that they're the easiest people to try and get a deal with. Australia and New Zealand, from everything that we've seen so far, are playing pretty hardball. So it's coming to a lot of, especially Tory conclusions on the backbench, that we cannot handle both of these at the same time. One of them's got to give. And it looks like that there will be hopefully very soon, there might be something to do with maybe an extension. We hope so. God, I hope so. But we'll see. Anyway, this comes from politics.co.uk. And it is, we can't fight COVID and Brexit at the same time. Everybody has a plan, said Mike Tyson, until you get punched in the mouth. And it's probably Tyson's best known quote, and with good reason. It speaks to anybody who has felt their heart sink and possibly their legs wobble as their crafted scheme runs into inconvenient events. In Britain of late, we've become accustomed to being hit by events, be it the full-on global crisis or just modest DIY jobs. Both Brexit and COVID could entitle severe economic shocks, and a great many jobs in this country depend on businesses being able to absorb the fallout from the pandemic and any effects of leaving the European Union. Inevitably, some sectors will be affected more than others. A recent weight report commissioned by Best for Britain from the Independent Social Market Foundation illustrated that the combined effects of COVID and Brexit would be that if you work in the northwest of England, the Midlands, or parts of London, it makes for particularly disturbing reading, though it's not exactly laugh a minute for the rest of the country either. The report divides businesses into 5 sectors of risk categories as well, and it looks at the impact of COVID, followed by an agreed free trade deal or no deal exit from the EU, and then the combined impact of these individual storms. In just 3 areas mentioned, more than a quarter of the jobs are in high-risk businesses should Britain exit without a deal. The report clearly shows that while leaving Europe with some kind of deal will be painful, exiting without a deal will be hugely damaging for many businesses. Businesses already reeling from the impact of COVID as well. The Conservative politicians, something that stands out in their analysis is the high level of risk in the so-called red wall seats that elected many Tory MPs at the last general election. The government places great importance on levelling Britain up and relying on this plan to hold on to those seats. But come December 31st, countless businesses in these red wall seats will face extremely significant challenges. If Britain says goodbye to the EU without a deal, Nissan will not be the only major manufacturer considering withdrawing from Britain altogether. So, do I urge colleagues to remember Tyson's warning about how useful plans are until one punch to the mouth is? Be in no doubt that in addition to the tragic human cost, COVID has already inflicted a huge economic blow. Large numbers of jobs have gone, and according to the Institute of Social and Economic Research, up to 16.5 million could be at risk. At some point, we tentatively leave lockdown. Plans for apprenticeships and rebuilding infrastructure will help somewhat, but businesses need time to get over the pandemic. There have already been discussions in Threadneedle Street about dropping interest rates to negative territory. This could destabilise the entire banking sector again and would, at the very least, put pension funds under intense pressure. Central banks do not have all the answers to human costs of job losses. Our health and care system also needs time to get over the pandemic, having many ways being stretched beyond breaking point. Of course, there are many elements we cannot control: the global prevalence and impact of the coronavirus and the domestic politics of countries with whom we wish to sign trade deals. To name but 2, but one thing we have to do is have some control of this, is the timing of the new trade agreements with Europe. We have already left the EU, Brexit has happened, but it is within our gift to agree an extension to that December 31st deadline, so that businesses, hospital trusts, civil servants, bankers and politicians and the rest of us do not have to get in the same ring with COVID and Brexit simultaneously. Ultimately, Britain has what it takes to deal with both of these challenges, but no amount of pluck and flag waving will save us from the utterly unnecessary damage that could be mitigated by ensuring that we are fighting one bout at a time. The Best for Britain report highlights the emerging risks to the entire country, and particularly to the Northwest and Midlands, of carrying on with the EU divorce negotiations as if COVID never happened. Brexit occurred on the 31st of January, just as the coronavirus was getting its gloves on. We cannot undo either of them, but we can take a pragmatic, common sense view of reiterating the opinion to avoid having to deal with 2 major threats at once and having to divert resources away from fighting the killer virus, and our immediate focus must be on COVID, and that may well mean giving ourselves more time to deal with the EU negotiations more thoroughly. Otherwise, come December, we could find ourselves wishing that we had not chosen to be in the ring with Tyson and Ali too. It's time to take back control of the timescale and focus on winning one fight at a time. I completely agree. And in this case, the Conservative, and especially the hard right wing of the Conservative part of the ERG, which pretty much is the Conservative Party at the moment, Seems to be no common sense. We've talked about this before many times. They are just determined to do Brexit at any cost because to them the cost is more than worth it. Because to them, disaster capitalism will reap great rewards for a very, very small section of the community in this country. And I'll tell you now, it's not going to be the vast majority of us are going to end up hurting incredibly bad.